Okay, do we need to start the broadcast, or is that already going?
Blessing, we're all set to start.
It started.
Thank you, Leslie.
Great. All set, Mary Rose?
All set.
Terrific. Good evening, everyone. This is Brendan Magnan, Chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission. I'd like to call to order the June 15th regular meeting of the Inland Wetlands Agency. Lisa, please call the roll.
Ranjit Bahav. Daniel Bedecker.
Here.
Jim Connors.
Here.
Matthew Connors.
Here.
Dave DeFlameri. Heather Donaldson Gladue. Steve Munson.
Here.
Jerry Panico. Lisa Tryon. Here. Brendan Magnan.
Here. Great, thanks, Lisa. We do have a quorum. Matthew Connors, could you please serve as designated alternate this evening?
Yes.
Thank you. As a reminder for the public, during this evening's meeting, which is going to be broadcast simultaneously on YouTube, it will be posted on the Milford, City of Milford website. And pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act and Governor Lamont's executive orders, so in accordance with that. During the meeting, if anyone from the public or members of the applicant wish to be recognized, please wait for me to recognize you. Please signal that you want to be recognized, either by waving your hand or using the raise your hand feature on Zoom. After you are recognized, please be sure for the first time to state your name and address before making any comments. That does not apply to the commission, but that does apply to any applicants and any public members of the public. Thank you very much. At this time, we'd like to invite everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mary Rose, if you could please show the flag. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you, everyone. At this time, we will move to item number C, which is public comments. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on topics not otherwise on the agenda? Is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak on topics not otherwise on the agenda? I do not see any hands raised. I do not see any requests. One last call. Anyone here wishing to speak on topics not otherwise on the agenda? Hearing none, moving on to old business. Mary Rose, could you introduce D1, please?
This is, one second. This is IWA 220021. It's 883 North Street. It's a proposal for renovation and reconstruction of an existing building for a deli with work within 150 feet of wetlands in the Wetland River watershed. We had been waiting for information from the city engineer. The item was tabled at the last meeting while the applicant and their consultants worked with the city engineer. Those revised plans got into the engineer late last week and were in the document links. City engineer's review is also in the links. I've got the recommendations on the screen, and there is a follow-up to this that I will share from the day after that. I would recommend that the Inland Wetlands Agency were to approve it this evening. They would include the conditions requested by the city engineer, which is that the test holes for the galleys be done prior to installation of the galleys. And if it's not a functioning system, they need to redesign the system before it's put into the ground. And that any permits required by the health department are obtained for the septic system abandonment and the well. And that if those require excavation or further work on the site, that they bring that back to the Wetlands Agency for review. The second item from the city engineer, I'm sorry, was that they received the stormwater report and found it acceptable.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Anything further that you would like to introduce? Any additional information, Mary Rose?
No, we do have Doug Rich with us this evening if anyone has any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rich, is there anything you would like that hasn't been already presented? Sorry, is there anything you'd like to add to the record that hasn't already been presented?
For the record, my name is Douglas Rich, landscape architect with Fuller Engineering and Land Surveying and office in Bridgeport, Connecticut. First, I'd like to thank the commission for their extreme patience on this project. It's been a very long task trying to get these conditions met with the city engineer and staff. I believe we've done that. I think we've set this project up in a way that allows us to move forward through planning and zoning without with any changes that may be raised during that process. It should not kick us back to inland wetlands. I believe we've met the burden of engineering to protect the wetlands as such. Right, then I thank you. I just welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you, Doug. Questions from the agency, thoughts from the agency? How about you, Mr. Connors?
Is Mary Rose okay with all those engineering things if we include that in the approval?
Yeah, it sounds like it. She said she would recommend that they be.
Okay. Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, Mary Rose, I don't want to speak for you, but that's what I heard.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I would recommend the city engineer's recommendations, which is, if additional, they need to test for the perk for the galley system, and that if additional excavations required for the abandonment of the septic or to reestablish the well, those plans would need to come back in for review.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to read the motion to approve. Can I just say, and at the end, to add the engineer's recommendations to this motion?
I believe that's already been put in there.
Oh, okay.
For you to
I will
consider.
read on. Sorry. Mr. Chairman, after duly considering all relevant factors, I move to approve application IWA-22-0021 883 North Street based on the plans entitled Proposed Deli 883 North Street, Milford, Connecticut, prepared by Andres Gilavelis by Fuller Engineering, 4 sheets dated 2/20/22, revised C21, C-31, C-61, 5/1/17/21, C-4.1, 5/31/22, the information in the file and presented this evening for the following reasons. This action will not have an impact or effect on the physical characteristics of the adjacent wetlands and watercourses, with conditions including the permittee must submit a construction plan prior to taking out the permit. Wetland notification be placed on as-built and the property deed to give notification to property owners that permits are required from the MIWA to work on the site. Documentation to be submitted to the MIWA office prior to bond release. Documentation compliance with the city engineer's requirements. In addition, site disturbance is necessitated for compliance with the health department's requirements or other permitting agencies. Additional permit review will be required from the MIWA. A bond of $6,470 must be posted with the MIWA for S&E controls, border plantings, wetlands boundaries markers, and an as-built showing finished 2-foot contours and locating all site structures. In construction or maintaining any structure or facility or conducting any activity control stormwater discharges to prevent erosion and sedimentation, and to otherwise prevent pollution of wetland and watercourses. Best management practices include, but are not limited to, practices identified in the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sedimentation control as revised 2004. Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual, Department of Transportation, Connecticut, DOT Drainage Manual as revised, and the Department of Transportation Standard Specifications revised. The permittee must submit a certificate by the project engineer that the completed project meets the design intent approval prior to bonds being released. The permit is issued 6/15/22, expires 6/15/27, unless otherwise provided by statute. That is my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. We have a motion. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Munson. Any further discussion on the motion? The only further discussion I would invite is, I know that the draft motion mentions the documentation of compliance with the city engineer's requirements, but I didn't see does that include the recommendations? Mary Rose, do you consider that to be inclusive of the recommendations?
I considered it to be the recommendations. We can ask Mr. Connors to amend his motion to change requirements to recommendations. I mean, recommendations to requirements.
Or just say requirements, including recommendations as presented on such and such a date. Date that is in the document.
Documentation of compliance with the city engineers. Documentation of compliance with the city engineers requirements and recommendations from 6/8 and 6/9/2022.
I would be more comfortable with that if someone would entertain a motion to amend the main motion.
I'll make the motion to amend the motion.
Thank
Very good.
Second, we have a second. Further discussion? Great. Hearing none. All in favor of the amendment to the main motion?
We do the roll call, don't we?
I guess we have to do a roll call. Sorry about that.
Yes, we do.
Do a first roll call on amending the main motion.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Yes.
Steve Monson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Hi. And now let's do a roll call vote on the main motion, please, as amended.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Yes.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Rich, good luck with the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Indeed. Mary Rose, could you put the agenda back up, please?
Sure can.
Item D2, if you want to introduce that one.
Alrighty, this is item D2. It's violation IWC 22011 918 Whalers Farms Road. Violation was issued on March 30th for work in and adjacent to Turkey Hill Brook without a permit. At your meeting on the June 1st, the agency reviewed the submitted plans, wetland mitigation proposal, and modified the violation. They required the following submission of a mitigation monitoring bond by today, and monitoring work to be done by 6:30 with reports at the planting and in the fall. I had not received the mitigation monitoring bond by 5 p.m. this afternoon. We have sent letters to Mr. Testo, certified, which have been returned. We've also sent them US mail and by email. We have received email from Mr. Testo, so one can assume that he's getting those emails. I know Mr. Wasmer is here this evening on another item. I don't know if he has any information from his
Mr. Wassmer, would you like to comment on the question that was just posed, please?
Sure. For the record, Ronald Wasmer, professional engineer, land surveyor. Mr. Testo did not participate in the meeting 2 weeks ago, so he was unaware that he needed to post the bond. I suppose I could take some credit for not getting him up to speed. He did reach out to me earlier this week when he got the email requiring the bond and the commencement of the work, but he hasn't had an opportunity to fulfill that obligation of posting the bond. My experience, it's probably going to take several weeks to obtain a bond, other than a cash bond. I'm not, and I generally don't deal in bonds, so I can't comment. But I just experience with other developers, they don't just pop out of the sky. So I'm supposed to meet with Mr. Testo some evening in the near future to go over multiple items. He's in the process of submitting a site plan application, which will come back to your commission. And I will encourage him to reach out to Mary Rose to see what form of bond is acceptable and to get a time frame as to when he can submit that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Wassmer. With a deadline of the bond for this evening before the work was to start, and then the work to be theoretically completed just over 2 weeks from today, is that doable for Mr. Testo to comply with this
I
order?
think it's a challenge certainly a challenge to get the bond. That's not going to happen tonight. And I think it's a challenge to get the work done within 2 weeks. Yes.
We've actually had a month, but the letters were not, they came back from the post office undeliverable. On all of the certified mail has not been picked up by Mr. Testo.
Mr. Wassmer, I think it would be best to advise your client that we do have the option to refer to this matter to the city attorney, and we will pursue that if he's non-responsive.
I understand that, and I will reach out to him again tomorrow.
Thank you. Mary Rose, any further?
Well, we've got a deadline that the agency made that obviously can't be met, because if he's bringing it into the office right now, we're not there. So do you want to modify this to give him another week to at least come in and talk to us? Cash bonds obviously can be created right away. Surety bonds, it depends upon how quickly your insurance agent can create one or get one, obtain one.
What would you recommend?
I haven't spoken with Mr. Testo, so I don't know his status. Our next meeting is July 6th. We could postpone the bond a week or two and postpone the beginning of work date, but the plants are already in the ground, if I remember correctly. They're trees that young saplings that he had planted of fruit trees already. They're just going to be moved over to the top of the berm on the site. So he says he had planted those trees before the requirement. They just need to be moved, and some other bushes need to be put in per Mr. Kenny's plan, as is shown before you on the screen. I would imagine that he'd be willing to water them as we move into the summer. It's going to be very critical that those plantings get watered on a regular basis. So if you're inclined to modify it this evening, I would require the bond to be submitted by the 30th and work to begin by the week later, either the 6th or the 13th of July.
What does the agency think?
That sounds like the best way to go with this, in my opinion.
I'm comfortable with it, Mary Rose.
So,
Chairman.
Mr. Munson?
I'm a little surprised that he seems to be having this much trouble getting a bond. My experience, they're not that difficult. On the other hand, we don't know his financial position, and that's always what bond is dependent on. So, I just want to be clear, Mary Rose, when do you think is a reasonable time to get this?
Without having without having spoken to Mr. Testo, I don't know what's reasonable in his world. But I know that had we had response earlier, they would have been in the ground already. So you don't want to let this go too long. We have, in one area, we've got the potential for manure to run downstream, down a hill into a stream. So we don't want to push this out months. I think it's reasonable if he's ignoring the emails and the mails and said he has no knowledge of it, to give him 2 weeks now that he got my email and has acknowledged it. But I don't think we want to, go to the end of the summer and then find more manure and more things. Right now, we know what was on the site as of the date of the survey. We don't know what's happened since then.
Mary Rose,
Okay.
what's the harm in just referring this to the city attorney? He's had ample notice, clearly.
There's no harm in it. I mean, he's hired the consultants. According to Mr. Wassmer, he's on the verge of applying for city permits to legalize the different operations he's got going on out there.
I think if there's harm and he's had 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks notice, and he hasn't been responsive, he should be held accountable.
It's the agency's decision.
The only thing I will say to that, the city attorney's office doesn't move real speedily on some of these things.
Well, I mean, that's
Okay.
either.
Maybe I'm getting myself in trouble here, but
Can we not speculate, Mr. Connors? And I would say that this is a precedent issue in my mind. We give him 2 weeks. What's to say he's not going to need another month?
that's right. Oh, I agree with you.
So let's not take responsibility for his lack of accountability and make up reasons for him not to respond.
Well,
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Connors, yes. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Wassmer, so there has been no contact with the client through you?
I've contacted the client, yes.
And has there been any response as to?
Earlier this week, once he received the email from Mary Rose, I can't speak as to why he's not accepting certified mail, but he received the email. He didn't understand what it was all about. I told him what it was briefly, and we were supposed to meet 2 days ago, and it didn't happen. I can call him tomorrow. He generally picks up the phone when I call him. For a long time, over the past few months, while we've been working on this, he's been working at this property as part of his current stable operations, etc. When I spoke to him earlier this week, he's told me that he now has a job somewhere, so I'm not sure where, but regardless, and that he doesn't get home until 5:30 in the evening, so it's made it a little bit more difficult to meet with him.
Appreciate that,
I
Mr.
guess
Watson.
to answer your question, he has acknowledged to me that he's received it, and I have personally spoke to him on the telephone.
So I'd be fine if we give him the benefit of the doubt and give him another 2 weeks, but that's it. That's the last extension without pursuing referring this to the attorneys. That'd be my recommendation.
I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
I agree with you too, man.
Do we have a motion?
Wait a second.
So just to be clear, Mr. Chair, you would be looking for the mitigation monitoring bond to be submitted by 6/30/22. And the plantings to be in by the 7th or the 13th, which date?
I would suggest the 13th for the plantings and the 29th for the,
Got it.
I'll make a motion to modify this violation for Mary Rose's recommendation.
That the mitigation monitoring bond be for plantings and monitoring reports be submitted by 6/29/22. And the completed mitigation and stabilization as described in Mr. Kenny's report of 5/31/22
Yeah.
be completed by 7/13/22.
Right, I agree. That's it. That's good.
we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Munson seconds. Do we have any further discussion on the table? Hearing none. Lisa, please, roll call vote.
Daniel Bedecker.
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Yes.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon.
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Thanks, Lisa. The motion carries unanimously. And Mary Rose, just for the record, he will get some sort of notice on the action that we've taken tonight from your office.
If you look at the share. Oh, maybe, hold on. What we've been sending is we're sending it to US mail. We have never received anything from Ms. Testo. We send it US mail without certified. We send it by email, and then we send it by certified return receipt required.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item D3, please.
Sorry. Just left the share up. Item D3 is IWA 220041. This is 1553 Boston Post Road. It's a proposal by Splash Car Wash to construct a facility with stormwater discharge within 100 feet of a wetland in the Indian River watershed. Site is currently vacant, but has been developed in the past. There is a Connecticut DOT stormwater easement along the eastern portion of the site, discharging into Clark's Pond. The city engineer and I have met with the applicant and his consultants to review the plans. The revised plans in a memo from the wetland scientist are in the meeting document link this evening. City engineer got the plans late and he did not have a review prepared for you this evening. At our last meeting, the concerns on the site were and the agency had questions on the snow storage plan, the status of the DEP DOT stormwater outfall, the velocity of water at the proposed stormwater outfall, pavement area that will remain in the lower portion of the project, and if grasses or wildflower or conservation mix were proposed for the formerly developed areas, and if those were going to be regularly mowed as lawn, or if they were going to be left as a low mow area, and the status of invasive species on the site. Several of those items were addressed in the revised plans and the documentation. This evening, I see we've got Darren Overton and Megan Raymond from SLR. And I thought I had seen Mr. Sheehy, but I'm not sure. Oh, there he is.
Yes.
He's still here. Yeah. And Darren, do you want to share your screen? Or do you want me to?
I can, if that works.
Okay. See if I got it turned on.
Yep, pass it over to you, Darren, if you could introduce yourself for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Darren Overton from SLR Consulting. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, working with Splash Car Wash on this proposed application that's before you. As Mary Rose mentioned, Glenn Sheely is in the meeting tonight from Splash Car Wash. And also Megan Raymond, our soil scientist and wetland biologist, is also attending the meeting. We're here to address the questions from last meeting and answer any other questions or concerns the commission may have.
Great, thank you.
My screen share is still disabled.
All right. Try that.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine. So the first plan I have up here is our landscape plan. And we met with Mary Rose and also the town engineer, and we went through the draft comments that we did receive from the town engineer. And we talked to our client and agreed to remove the pavement in the back here that was not being disturbed as part of the development area. We've proposed to seed that with a conservation and wildlife mix. And we've made some adjustments to the erosion control plan. We're going to do that in phases. So in the development area that you see for the car wash, the pavement and other existing improvements that remain out there will be demolished in order to make way for the car wash. There'll be a temporary sediment basin that we had proposed previously on the plan. We adjusted that, moved it back a little bit. The pavement in back will remain while this is in place and this is being built and stabilized. And we have a riprap overflow that can then spread out along that pavement and sheet flow down into the vegetated area and into the wetlands as part of Clark Pond. So in the second phase, once this is built and stabilized, this will also give the applicant the ability to build the permanent stormwater basin, which is a bioretention basin, get that all seeded and stabilized before they begin to pipe stormwater to it. Then once this is stabilized, the sediment trap can be removed. The asphalt that exists there now can be removed, this seeded. And as part of the discussion we had at the last meeting regarding the discharge, we've extended that discharge pipe to the area where the DOT drainage pipe that runs in the easement off of Route 1 discharges. So we've extended that right next to the head wall and the discharge pipe for the DOT system. And we're proposing to put a flared end and a riprap splash pads for erosion protection here, permanent scour protection. And then we're also going to extend that riprap at the outlet of the DOT outfall as well. There's exposed soil there. There's a bit of a scour hole. And in past experience on projects, when we send this to the DOT district for review, they often want us to make some improvements there and put a new splash pad in. So we've gone ahead and shown that. We have also taken these plans and we are in the process of sending those out to the district for review so that we can have that review as we're going through the process. And when the applicant is ready to begin construction, we should have no further comments from the DOT. But all of that would generally be related to the frontage improvements. There was also one of the commission members brought up, I think at the meeting it was referenced to the not the DOT, but the Connecticut Deep Drainage Manual. But actually Mary Rose was kind enough to clarify the section of the deep erosion control manual that the commissioner was referring to regarding the outfall, because there was a concern that the actual elevation of the outfall was several feet above the elevation of the receiving wetland or water course just off site. So I reviewed that section, which is section 5-10-6. It's regarding energy dissipators. And what it notes is that outlet protection is also required if the conduit outfall is set above the receiving channel. For example, cantilevered, causing the water to drop at the outlet end of the culvert. So while it talks about the outlet being above the receiving channel, the example that it notes being cantilevered is the key part of that needs to be focused on. And what this is referencing is sometimes you have an outfall pipe that is elevated in the air. So you have essentially a waterfall when the water flows through the pipe and it drops down vertically onto the soil or splash pad below. And what it's noting is if you have a situation like that, it can require additional scour protection at the outfall. Mm-hmm. So in this situation, while our outfall is above the receiving wetland, we don't have a situation where it's cantilevered, where the water is going to spill out like a waterfall and have additional energy that may cause erosion. So I think we've addressed that on the plans. One last graphic I'd just like to show before I have Megan discuss some of the work that she's done since the last meeting to address some of the questions that the commission has was I've just created a snow storage graphic here, a little bit of color. We'll zoom in on that. Oh, I lost it. Try that again. Okay. So the main areas, I think, as I mentioned, that we had opportunities for snow storage in the previous meeting was this area here, the lower right corner, as it's shown on the map, in the lower left corner. We did make some adjustments to the landscaping to leave open areas there so that snow could be pushed in these areas. And these are relatively flat, but it does fall away down towards the wetland. But significant distance, I'm sorry, from the wetland, over 100 feet. And most likely this would have an opportunity as the snow melts to infiltrate into the ground or sheet flow away. And any of the debris or any sediment that maybe come along with the snow would be deposited on the surface here and not run down towards the wetlands. So I envision this area would be the majority of snow storage for the main entrance in and the entrance lanes and the parking in back here. And then the snow storage here would serve the exit lane. There are some limited snow storage areas up towards the building and in the corner here for the vacuum stall area. I suspect that they may push the snow out here and down this exit drive here if these areas fill up for a winter where we have, more snowfall maybe than normal. So I believe there's opportunities here to manage the snow on the site within areas adjacent to the pavement, but certainly there's plenty of storage back here outside of the 100-foot upland review area where they could move the snow for significant snow storage in larger snowfall events or years where we have unusually high snowfall. So if anybody has any questions on that, be happy to answer them, or I can just have Megan present her memo from her recent site walk regarding the vegetation, and maybe just take questions at the end after Megan presents.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Overton, do we have a copy of this map in our set?
I did not send a copy of this graphic. I can email that to you. I just created it for presentation purposes.
Okay, it would be expected that would be what the snowplow company would get a copy of, so it should be part of the plan set.
Okay.
Yeah, and Maros, it's your recommendation that we would, before we take any action, we would have the opportunity for the city engineer to review all of the revised submissions, correct?
Right, we did, we met with the engineer a week ago, Tuesday, I think. And he seemed to feel that they were on the right track. He just didn't get the plans in time to have time to review them for tonight. So we could review it with the city engineers. We could approve, if the agency was inclined to approve it, they could do it with the caveat that they had to comply with the city engineer's review. But if there's any changes, the plans would have to come back. And we also don't have this plan in our set.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Overton. Anything further, or do you want to pivot to Ms. Raymond?
I'm all set at this point. I'd like to turn it over to Megan to present her information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Darren. Good evening. My name is Megan Raymond. I'm a professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist, certified floodplain manager at SLR. And I delineated the wetlands on the site. And in addition, or most recently, that occurred about 2 years ago. In response to the comments at the meeting last month, you asked me to take a look at the site. You were concerned or interested in the presence, dominance of invasive species on the property. And so I did take a look out there. recently and wrote those observations in a memo that was submitted to Mary Rose last evening. And essentially, and a lot of this information, I guess, specifically like in terms of the vegetative composition of the site, was provided in the wetland delineation report. But as it relates to invasive species management, that is something that is just a new topic to address. So the site is, as you're aware, is about 2.5 acres, and it has been previously disturbed, previously developed. So the condition of the site is quite variable. You have some areas up on the frontage of Route 1 with manicured lawn. As you move back, you sort of see a mix of impervious material. Are you going to pull up a figure, Darren? Sorry, you're still sharing. I actually don't have.
Do you want me to share? Can you share, Meg, or?
I can actually, I wasn't set up to do that. I was just going to use the plans that we have before us right now, if that's okay. Yeah.
Could we, Darren, if I could ask if you could get a little closer to the site. So the agency members have small screens in order to see what you're doing. If we could have a, there you go.
Great. Maybe just zoom down a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, perfect.
Is there a different plan you want me to show, Megan?
This one's great. You know, if I'd been thinking about this, I could have had an aerial up, but I do have some aerials in the delineation report. But this is perfectly fine, I think, for the discussion this evening. Because essentially it's really not, this is not a complicated discussion or approach.
Do you have the existing aerial?
Sure. Yeah, let's use that. That sounds great. Thanks. And thank you for your patience, agency members. Perfect. That's great. Although I guess it's not quite, anyway, that building isn't, yeah, Argus, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit older aerial when the building was still there.
Exactly. So just pretend that that's no longer there. So essentially, we have a developed corridor on your frontage of Route 1, southern road line of Route 1, a mix of surficial materials on the site with impervious areas, and then areas that are open that are currently vegetated with some non-native species such as burning bush, common mugwort, autumn olive, but really a mix of native plants, eastern cottonwood, etc. And obviously we're not really incredibly concerned with the area up on the frontage because that's where the work is proposed. So any vegetation that's in that area is already going to be part of the removals with the development envelope. But as we move to the rear of the site, to the southern portion of the site, not only are we increasing in ecological significance with proximity to the wetland, to the protected resources of Clark Pond, which obviously is the impoundment of Indian River. So that is a focus area that we really want to hone in on. We have a great opportunity on this project because we're really confining the improvements to the northern portion of the site. And we're able to really repurpose that buffer to the wetland by removal of asphalts and some stormwater management where there's none presently today. So that's the area that we really wanted to focus on. And in that zone, how we described it in the wetland delineation report and in the memo is that we have about a half acre of a woodland edge that's upland area that exists as a wooded buffer between the previous site development and this wetland resource. And in that zone, we do have a nice mix of native plants, predominantly canopy trees, pin oak, red maple, again, some eastern cottonwoods, but we also see a little bit of interspersion here and there, just slight punctuated individuals actually of Japanese knotweed. And Japanese knotweed, as we know, is really problematic because it spreads aggressively. It can invade healthy ecosystems, and it's something that we really just don't want to have gain any foothold out here. But because it's sort of interspersed and intermixed with a native palette, we don't want to go in and just spray herbicides to try to get rid of it. What we're electing to do is to address the presence of knotweed now in two ways. As Darren described, we are now removing that asphalt, that remnant asphalt in the back of the property and seeding that with a nice conservation seed mix. In addition to that, we also are going to punctuate that area with about half a dozen of red maple, 2 to 3 foot red maple saplings. And in addition to interspersing that area with some woody plants, we're going to be introducing some more red maple saplings along the northern edge of that woodland edge. Concurrently, and the purpose of that is to kind of just get some growth. Red maples grow pretty quickly in these types of environments. They can be helpful with shade. But in addition to the planting, we're going to be spot removing that knotweed, and that's going to take place with essentially cutting primarily, but along that edge where we're planting the saplings, we're going to dig down and take out the root systems where we can find it. But the cutting, actually, if you've persistently cut and we can address that as a management effort, we have had some success with this density, with persistent cutting, and we're proposing to do that over a 3-year time period. And the 3-year time period is really an important monitoring protocol because we want to just make sure, like, if again, we're looking at this system, I looked at it, one day this year, one day when we did the delineation a few years ago, we don't see a massive change in biomass, massive change in presence or density of this plant. But if we are doing some removals, there is some site work proposed. There could be a situation where we're opening up an area and knotweed could come in. We want to make sure that does not happen. And so we're going to actively monitor that buffer to just ensure a successful restoration of wetland buffer with the project. And so that the 3-year time period is appropriate to establish that. So that's essentially just the overall synopsis of the invasive plant management, is that in general, how it exists today it's not a significant problem. It's about the typical species that you would expect. But what we really want to focus on is that area in the buffer, ensuring that we don't see any significant perturbations or alterations in species presence or increase in density of Japanese knotweed. We're going to come at it in those 2 ways, spot removal as well as some planting. And then I guess I did tack on to the end of the memo just my observations about the DOT Stormwater Outlet. That actually did not come up in our meeting last month, but I did see it in maybe some comments from the city engineer or in a different communication. And I believe there was a question as to whether that outlet was a regulated wetland resource. And obviously that area was looked at during the delineation, and the conclusions of that assessment was that the DOT outlet is not a delineated, there's no delineation of wetland resources between the terminus of that outlet and the wetland boundary, which is actually off-site. It's just about 5 feet off the property line. And that is because we do not see the requisite criteria for resource identification. We do not see for a wetland, we do not see very poorly drained alluvial or floodplain soils. We do not see an intermittent watercourse feature with a permanent channel and banks and presence of hydrophytic vegetation, scour or alluvium, or standing water greater than persisting greater than or not following a storm event. So we're not, i.e. we do not see base flow in that location. So effectively what this is truly just stormwater coming out of the state drainage system on Route 1. It's outletting in this location, but that outlet is not persistent enough, that drainage is not persistent enough to provide wetland functionality. And there's no connection between that pipe from a wetland perspective and the delineated wetland boundary. And I would also like to add that, the site was also looked at in 2017 by William Kenny Associates, did flag the wetlands out in the site in 2017, and they did not pick up that resource either. So there have been 2 soil scientists that have looked at here and have not identified that as a regulated resource or any connection between the 2. And I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about the observations or the thought process behind that. But that is a summary of my work on this project to date. And I do think, given, we did talk about this at the last meeting, but there is a great opportunity with this site to really restore the buffer and provide some additional protections to Clark Pond with the project. We do have a net decrease in impervious. We have a centering of the work up on the road line on Route 1. So the proposed project will not adversely affect the wetland physical characteristics of the wetland or any functionality the wetland currently provides off-site. And in fact, we'll see some improvement with nutrient assimilation, et cetera, with the reestablishment of the buffer. So thanks a lot for your time. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mary, very much, Ms. Raymond. Very good. Any questions or thoughts from the agency? Ms. Tryon, was that a question you were waving, or was that just a hand gesture?
Yes, if I just could. I'm delighted with the improvements and the modifications. I'm just a bit concerned because we haven't heard from the city engineer, and I'm wondering if maybe that's just something we wait for. But I think the modifications being suggested are great and in line with improving the soil.
Yeah, I have the same sentiment, Ms. Tryon. This project has all net benefits. I would recommend that we give the city engineer ample time to respond before we take any action.
I think that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's a good idea.
Generally how we do that. We're not treating this project any different than any other. But directionally, to the applicants, excellent presentation. Everything looks very good. You've done a terrific job, very comprehensive, and yep, we just need to make sure that we have our expert to look at the latest revisions, come back with any final responses, any final recommendations, and then we're happy to have you on the agenda at the next meeting. And Maros, remind me, I believe we have until July 22nd to make a decision by statute.
By statute for this application, July 22nd is our 65th day. So the agency would either need to call for hearing or make a decision at that time.
Right. So in our next meeting, I'm supposing, Maros, we should have the engineer's response in the next week. So we'll have ample time to review those before the next meeting, correct?
Correct. What's been happening of late is that scheduling and workload as the busy summer moves on. He's tried to track and pace out time, as we all have, to review each thing. And if it misses that hour or whatever, it gets filled up with other items, but nothing moves through that leaves room for it to be reviewed later on.
Great. Okay, so I recommend that we take no action this evening. I gather from the responses already that there's no additional information we need from the applicant. So unless there's anything,
Chairman?
Mr. Munson?
Yeah, just remind, we do need a copy of that snow storage plan in the file.
Yeah, I think that's clear. Thanks, Mr. Overton. Great.
Understood. We will get that to Mary Rose. Appreciate the commission's time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and your expertise. Thank you, Ms. Raymond.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Okay, moving on to next agenda item. I think it's E1.
Sorry, lost my screen. I went to get the aerial view so they could have it, and then I couldn't break in to get it to them. The next item is item PA 220048 at 67 Cooper Avenue. Sorry, here. This is a proposal for 2 single-family homes where one home was recently removed. It's in the South Central Shoreline Watershed. It's on the Finger Streets off of East Broadway. Wetlands were flagged in December by Scott Stevens, Soil Science and Environmental Services. Joey Cotispoti called me in December, asked me to come out and look at the site as the flagging was happening just before they were taking down the existing home. He didn't know what was going to happen in the winter when this application was going to come through, and he wanted to give me time to get those pictures and get a location of those flags along the site. What I'm sharing on the screen is the former house and garage that was on this property. There's 2 wetland flags. I'm sorry, 2 wetland lines. First line is the inland wetland line. The second line is the tidal wetland line. And the very faint red line is the approximate property line for this parcel. And this is from the soil scientist report, which was in your links. So my sidewalk notes and photos are in the links, as is the city engineer's review of the project. The city engineer's only caveat was, as similar to 883 North Street, that testing be done on the infiltration system prior to the drainage system being installed to ensure that there's enough room between the water table and that drainage system. If we roll through here, we go forward. I have some photos from my site walk. It's the city engineer's review. This is the site as it stood on December 10th. This photo is the back right-hand corner that you were looking at from the air. The pink flags are the inland wetland flags, and a little bit further out here are some blue flags that denote the tidal wetland. The mean high water line, which behind the tide gate is elevation 2.9, is located on the Codispoti map just in front of the inland wetlands line. The site was in the process of being demolished while I was there. The gas company was shutting it down. So they had begun to take things away and move things off site. That's why there's a little bit of mess here. You can see we've got Phragmites right up to the wetlands lines on the left-hand side of the lot. And this backs right up to the Silver Sand Marsh. So this garage is about 10 feet, I believe, off the wetland line, and the house, I think, was like 15 feet off of the wetland line as it had stood. This is the proposed, the plan of where that house was. So this was those corners of the house that you were looking at. It's about 15 feet off the line. This is about 10 feet off of the mean high water line. And the wetland line just a little bit further beyond. Those first flags you saw were over here. You saw the matted down Phragmites in this area. This is a lot split. It was 3 lots originally. They're creating 2 lots, which we're going, speaking with Joe Griffith this afternoon, we're going to need to split this into 2 permits because it's 2 lots. So this distance shows you that from the mean high water line where the garage was about 10 feet off, the proposed house would be about 21 feet off with the deck footings, several feet closer for that egress out of the house. And on this side where it was 15 feet away, it's now the house would be 21 feet away with the deck being marginally closer. And if we move over here, comment I had on the plans, and I've spoken to Mr. Kersaden about it, is that the soil stockpiles typically on the beach lots, we don't allow them in the rear. Once you get the houses up, it's hard to get those out. We don't want it to land in the wetlands. And since we're in a flood zone, we really don't want to raise our elevations above our neighbors. The stormwater is all roof drainage going to galley systems in the front yard, 1 on each side of the house. And we've got porous paver driveways proposed. The only other comment I had on the plans was that and I haven't spoken with Jeff Gordon of Codispoti, the seed mixture they have, there isn't really a planting plan, but the seed mixture they have includes some Kentucky bluegrass, and that is rather salt sensitive and may not be the best choice for this area. I would recommend that wetland boundary markers be placed as we typically do in this area so that the new homeowners are aware that it exists on the property. We have Mr. Kersaden with us this evening to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Mary Rose. Mr. Kersaden, is there anything you would like to add to the record?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, Kevin Kersaden, representing the applicant and the owner, Artisan Home Restorations LLC. My address is 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. No, Mary Rose gave a succinct explanation and summary of the project. We are moving the houses away from where the previous house sat, and it's a process that will also require not only a coastal area site plan approval by the Planning and Zoning Board, but also a special permit because we're within a certain number of feet from, there's not only inland wetlands, there's tidal wetlands. So this will have further reviews, and the city engineer has been given the information, and I don't know if he's given his full comments yet, but he's involved in the process. Thank you.
Mr. Crusaden, just to follow up to Mary Rose's recommendations, I believe she had 3 initial recommendations upon receipt of the plan. Are you going to be taking those on board and submitting a revised plan with those accommodated?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had a brief conversation with Jeff Gordon the other day after I had spoken with Mary Rose about this, and yeah, we haven't come up with the final reply to that, but yes, we are taking those into consideration, and we'll address her concerns. I think that Mr. Gordon's comment was that it's less of a stockpile and it's more of a backfill, and just being able to have enough soil back in the rear of the house, because as Mary Rose pointed out, it's difficult once the foundations are in and the houses are built to transport the soil back and forth. So we will continue to have that conversation to make sure that we satisfy the agency's and Mary Rose's concerns.
Great, thank you. At this time, does the agency have additional questions?
So,
Considering this is a new application, is there any need for consideration for a site walk?
Chairman.
Mr. Munson?
I don't see a tremendous need for a site walk on this. I sort of like to have site walks myself. I think they're instructive, but I'm not sure what we'd be looking for. I mean, Mary Rose seems to have a pretty good idea of what this is, and
How about anyone else? Does anyone else have a view on whether we need a site walk?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I see some nodding from Commissioner Bedeker and Ms. Tryon. I would agree. I don't think we need a site walk. So is there any additional information that we need from the applicant before the next meeting, aside from their response to the recommendations from Mary Rose?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for Mr. Crusaden, and I'll include it in a note to him. There's no provision on the site plans for dewatering if it's necessary for foundation. Dewatering pumps can't go directly into the marsh, and they can't go, I don't recall if there's catch basins on the street, but they can't go into a catch basin. So the provision needs to be made. It could be a silt sack that drains it slowly in the ground out to the marsh, back into the ground, but it can't be piped directly. So if we could just have a note from Codiscoti on the plan on what the proposal would be for dewatering on site.
Understood. Thank you.
And Mary Rose, did you mention that this application needs to be split into 2 for each of the lots?
Right, it came in as one because it was one lot that's being split into 2. And in the new permitting system, it will be permanently tracked as 67 Cooper, but it's really going to be, I don't know, Kevin, if you know numbers yet, it's going to be 67 and 69 or 67 and 65. And so one of them is going to always be an orphan. And so we may, I wanted to note that on the agenda tonight. I'll speak with Kevin in the city attorney's office, but we may either split this into an A and B or just add whatever job number this is, 48, add a 49 to it so that it can run concurrently, but be tracked in zoning and building so that they're all together in the new permitting system.
Thank you, Mary Rose. together but separate.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Crusaden, for the application and working with the office, and we look forward to speaking to you at the next agenda. Or at the
Thank
next-
you. Chairman.
Moving on to item E2, please.
Item E2 is also Mr. Gerstaden. This is a pre-application submitted by Fran Bard Milford for review and recommendations prior to a full application. This is a proposal to add a parking area to an existing building. And I got lost. I apologize. Hold on, let me stop that share. Add a parking area to an existing building for storage and display of machinery for sale. The work would require the filling and grading for construction of the parking area. Wetlands were flagged on the site by Bill Kenny and William Kenny Associates. Applicant and their consultants would like input from the agency on their proposal before they begin the work. Because this work is in a flood zone and requires filling to level for that parking area, and it also requires infiltration. Preliminary plans show a compensatory storage area, which is when you fill in a flood zone, but you create a storage area to hold that same amount of water in another area on the site. And I believe, Mr. Crusaden, do you have other experts with you this evening, or are you presenting?
No, I believe we do have from Rostiso, the engineers, and I thought Mr. Santa Cruz.
Yep.
And we have, I thought it was Bill Kenny, but he might not be on.
All right. So what I'm showing you on the screen now is a shot from the permitting system that shows an aerial view of the building. We're on Woodmont Road. This is a line of ball to the north of the site. Down here to the south, you've got, Little White Schoolhouse. And over further south is I-95. To the north is Route 1. This over here is the Indian River. These are the existing park areas on the site. And I don't know if Rose Tizo wants to share, or I can share the map of the property.
I do have PDFs to share. If you'd like me to make me presenter, I could do that.
Certainly can. You just need to identify for the record.
Yep. I'm Steve Santa Cruz with Rose Tizo. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Share screen.
What's your office address, Mr. Santa Cruz?
And we are located at 35 Brentwood Avenue in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Great, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Get to the plan here. All right. Just trying to get to the right plan here. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, as you can see, the existing building is located here, the existing parking lot adjacent to the building and in front of the building. And there's, it's kind of hard to see, but there's two driveway entrances here and here. And this gray hatched area is where the client would like to propose a new paved parking area for vehicle storage, outdoor vehicle storage. And also, I could zoom in on this area, which is our flood mitigation area. There's some proposed contours going down from 14 to 8 elevation. And that's to compensate for this area in particular. These dark dashed lines delineate the flood area. So as you can see, it's running along the back of this new flood area that will be proposed. And this area of proposed pavement will need to be compensated for the fill that will be required to level out the parking lot in this area. And we also have pavement in back of that, which is not in the flood area because of the way the site contours are. So that's why we chose this area to show proposed pavement for as well, because of the grading of the site. And we also have some preliminary stormwater considerations for the new pavement. We have planned to show a gravel swale to capture the water coming off of the new pavement here, with a grass strip to provide some stormwater quality improvements to catch debris and oil. And this swale will also provide some preliminary stormwater quality improvements before discharging into a stormwater underground stormwater basin here to attenuate for the runoff. And this will discharge into a proposed plunge pool in this area. And we could show like a level spreader to dissipate the water slowly into the existing flood area. And so that's just kind of a summary of what we have so far planned for the site. So if there's any questions.
Great, thank you for the initial presentation. We have some initial questions for the applicant. Mr. Munson.
Yes, is there a snow removal plan in place or contemplated?
We don't have a plan at this time, but you know, I think there's room to make a plan for it. There's, you know, plenty of edges along the pavement that's not being impeded by any structures or anything really. You know, my thought is they're just going to push it off to the side, and we have a lot of linear feet along the pavement to provide for that.
Any further follow-up on that, Commissioner Munson?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to see a plan. You know, what exactly would you be doing? Where do you anticipate putting the snow, and are you going to keep it from melting into the Indian River?
Sure.
You say this, just a quick question here. This, for you, Mr. Chairman, this newly paved area is going to be used for vehicle storage.
Correct. Yep.
I hear that. It is,
Yep.
okay. How many vehicles? Just.
I actually, I'm not sure how many vehicles at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Munson, I'm sorry. This is Kevin Kersaden, 3 Lafayette Street for the applicant. So the, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Munson, but I just wanted to, this is, this plan to increase the parking area is being done in concert with an overall potential change in the use that's going to require some extensive zoning applications, including potentially an amendment to a zoning regulation. So it could go one of two ways. It could be simply in place for additional parking and not built out until or unless the planning and zoning approvals are granted eventually. But the potential use is, when we say vehicle storage, could also be for vehicle storage for sale, such as construction equipment, that type of thing. So that the numbers and types of vehicles are varied, and we haven't really nailed down exactly. The intention is that my client's purchasing this property, the closing's taking place tomorrow, would be a new owner. And once they get through the closing, he may or may not decide to relocate a business here. So that's what we wanted to get a jump start on the inland wetland application process, to get any questions like you've asked about the snow removal and snow plan and this other concern. So I just wanted to give it a little bit more background for you.
Thank you, Mr. Crusaden. That's helpful.
Yeah,
Yes.
the reason I brought it up is because if you have a lot of vehicles, that means you got a lot of potential oil, and the usual stuff that comes off of you, oil, salt, that kind of stuff, and that all gets into the snow, which is it's a question relating to what's going to happen with the snow that gets all this.
I think the question is clear, Mr. Munson. I think it's clear. Moving on to Mr. Bave.
Yeah. Good evening, through you, Mr. Chairman. So I actually had similar question as that of Commissioner Munson, as what is the basis of creating so much parking lot area? I mean, it is huge area. So that was question number one. And question number two was, did the applicant consider any alternative surface treatments, such as pervious surface, or there are many types of surfaces that can infiltrate water instead of asphalt surface, which is totally impervious.
Yeah, so that's to you, Mr. Santa Cruz. Sorry if I'm butchering your last name. Santa Cruz?
It's okay.
Santa Cruz?
I'm used to it. Yeah, Santa Cruz. That's
Okay.
right. Currently, yeah, we're considering bituminous pavement because that's what the client requested, and he like Kevin also said, this vehicle storage will be for sales as well. So I'm sure he wants it to look a certain way. He might be open to discussion about different surfaces, gravel maybe. I'm not sure at this time.
Given that this is an early application, we would encourage you to think about potential alternatives, at least to present what those options might look like in terms of your application, whether it's aesthetic, whether it's functions, etc. And honestly, what we're most interested in is that you've contemplated the implementations in such a way that has the least amount of potential impact to the wetlands and watercourses. So it's really going to be upon you to do that due diligence and come back to us with, what you've considered.
Understood.
Great, thank you. Ms. Tryon.
At the risk of being redundant, yeah, I'm curious about so much asphalt, so close to the river, the vehicles that will be there, that will be stored there. Obviously, they're commercial vehicles. Are they bulldozers? Are they pickup trucks? Are they forklifts? Are they diesel? The fact that a flood zone seems to cross over the pavement just makes me curious and a little nervous about that kind of runoff. I see where you have a swale on one side of the parking lot, but it's not surrounded by it. So yeah, I would just, the next time we meet, like to know more about the vehicles that are going to be kept there. Are they going to be stored there 6 months out of the year or a year? Are they new vehicles or are they older vehicles, like used vehicles being sold that might potentially have more leaks of oil than a brand new vehicle? So I'm just curious about that at this point. And I know it's early days.
Thank you, Commissioner Tryon. How about Mr. Matthew Connors? Anything that you'd like to know about this application as they're presenting for the first time?
Honestly, the only thing was the snow removal, like Mr. Munson brought up, and I think that was answered. I think we should look into possible plans for that.
Okay. How about Mr. James Connors?
I was just curious, is this your line, the extra line of all building that was for sale?
Sorry, you were a little muddled there. Can you repeat the question?
I said, is this building your line of all extra factory building that they had up for sale?
Mr. Crusader may know that. This is across the street from a line of all.
Line of all factory, but they had a second building that's been up for sale for a while. I was just curious if this was that building.
I don't believe so, Mr. Connors.
Okay.
Mayor Rose, what other considerations would you suggest that Mr. Crusade and Mr. Santa Cruz consider that we haven't discussed?
Mr. Santa Cruz, the parking lot, I think I'm understanding the parking lot comes off and dog legs to the right there, so that you have the minimal impact on the flood zone. Because my first question would be why we're not squaring off the back of the parking lot to keep a further distance from the river.
Are you talking about this area where I'm circling here? Or
Right, correct.
Right. Yeah, so if you could see the flood zone line, I know it's a little hard to see. This dash line here,
Yep.
and then there's another flood zone line here. So this whole area in back is not in the flood zone. It's a raised area on site. The only flood zone area we're crossing with the pavement is this area to access that back area. So that was the kind of thinking for this area, was again because of the site contours and whether it's in the flood zone or not, which it's not. So I hope that kind of answered your question.
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Because directly behind the building is below elevation 10 and would be more
Yes.
filling in the flood zone.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. But this, the entry into that back parking lot, where you've got elevation 12 shown on your drawing, the proposed elevation 12. To the right of that, we've got a little, it looks like a little oxbow in the river. So,
Yeah.
okay, so.
And yeah, and this is a raised berm right here.
It's a rock outcrop. Yep.
Yeah. And so this actually goes up to elevation, I believe, 15 right here. And so we're kind of proposing to just flatten this little area out. And not really touch anything closer to the pavement than we have to in that area. No, we want to minimize the impact to the wetland and the river as much as we can.
I mean, so I have a follow-up question to that. The hash marks in the left side of that pavement area, what is that to know? What are all those?
Oh,
hash-
okay. This was our kind of a conceptual stormwater storage area.
Okay,
That's where the swale would be outletting to, and then there's an outlet, conceptual outlet from here into a splash pad to the lower side of this flood area,
mhm.
this way.
Would you be through you, Mr. Chairman, would you be proposing a water quality structure before entering? I see you've got clean outs on each row. Proposing a water quality structure before entering and a clean out row for your underground system?
Yes, so the swale, this structure right here would be the water quality unit, and then from there it would enter the galleries. And we could add a clean out row to the galleries as well as we get more into the details of the design.
And would there be a clean out, like an oil water separator, hydrodynamic separator on one of these catch basins that comes in from the lower parking area to catch any?
From here,
areas?
yeah, this one could be a hydrodynamic separator as well.
Any further questions, Mary Rose?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bave?
Yeah, I would like to know how many trees are they going to cut?
So maybe you could rephrase that as how many trees they're proposing to cut?
Yes. Yeah.
How many trees are, so there's, we do have the wood line, the current wood line, it's this, if you could see this line right here denoting the current edge of woodlands. And that's all the information I could give you at this time is you could kind of see we're proposing pavement within the wooded area to the right of that.
So I think we would ask you to come back to us with more of a definitive answer on that. Not putting you on the spot now.
Yep.
But that would be something we would take into consideration.
Yep.
Farrah, wouldn't we want another sort of wetland expert to weigh in on this as opposed to just a engineer? Sorry.
Right. I think, this is just a pre-application. It's to get a general question or idea from the agency on what they might want to see, so that as they're gathering their items and meeting with other city departments, they can get a robust set of plans together before they get to us. Mr. Kenny wasn't with us this evening. I would imagine for this, the agency may consider a site walk,
Sure.
which they can do when you've got a more defined plan together for the site. And I'm sure at that time, Mr. Kenny would be more than happy to explain the project.
Thanks for clarifying that. I didn't recall that you mentioned, or someone might have mentioned, Mr. Kenny's involvement. But yeah, we need that expertise as you bring the plan forward. We're going to need that kind of expert. And I definitely would be a fan of a site walk, given the magnitude of this plan and just the complexity of it.
I'd agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
I agree also.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I agree, and I got one more request. These plans are extremely busy and it's very difficult to follow.
Yes.
So it would be easier if, these plans are made easy to understand.
Yeah, we could tone down the existing contours, and we'll have a kind of a full set of plans with more layers shut off. Hopefully that'll help clarify some things.
For you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Matthew Connors.
So just in regards to the northeast area that you were saying that was outside of the floodplain, the parking lot area.
Yep.
So you would say, I'm just trying to read this map. So that's around the highest point of the parking lot, right?
No, well, I mean, the
In
low
that
point
area, right?
is, yeah, so the low point of the parking lot is here within the 12 contour. And it does slope down from this area.
Is there any sort of mitigation in terms of what you're going to do with the water runoff coming off that sort of slope?
Coming off of the slope.
Yeah,
from-
of that area that is the high area of the parking lot. Like,
So it's gonna run off into this catch basin, which will run to this catch basin, and that'll be a water quality separator. This will run into our stormwater system. The stormwater system will discharge into a water quality plunge pool with a level spreader, which will outlet the water back into the flood area.
gotcha.
Okay, so I think we've given you some initial feedback as you requested. We appreciate you coming before us. Unless there's anything else, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe the last agenda item under E is coming up next.
Oops.
And Mr. Munson, I may need to step away for 5 minutes in just a few minutes. So you may need to chair during my absence.
Just get the agenda up. Okay, the next item is IWA 22058. I'm sorry, 5233 Howard Court. This is an application for proposal to raise and reconstruct a single-family home with construction, grading, and associated infrastructure in and within 100 feet of wetlands and watercourses in the South Central Shoreline watershed. In the wetlands were flagged on the site by Bill Kenny and William Kenny Associates. This project has been sent to the city engineer for review. And Connecticut Civil Group has also submitted a video of the property for you to review. I believe we have Ron Wassmer and Linda Lewis of the Civil Group with us here this evening. Ron, do you want me to share the video now just to orient the agency, or do you want to share the plans, or do you want me to share the plans first?
Good evening. I think I'd like to walk through the plans briefly. If you could start with putting the existing condition survey up. Thank you. Good evening. For the record, Ronald Wasmer, professional engineer, land surveyor with an office at 158 Research Drive. I'm here representing Graham Wiley. Graham Wiley is the property owner and the applicant. This is 33 Howard Court, map 30, block 369, parcel 34. I'm going to briefly walk you through the application. I expect that the commission may choose to hold a public hearing. So bear with me as we briefly walk through this, and then I'll entertain questions, and Mary Rose can also share that video of the site before we wrap things up. As Mary Rose mentioned, the wetlands were flagged by William Kenny. The property is bounded on the north by Howard Court. Howard Court is an improved road, but only up to the driveway of the existing house, the existing driveway and the existing house. The road is not improved beyond this. The city recently improved the road near the driveway to access ball fields that they own just to the north of Howard Court. The land to the north is owned by the city of Milford. The land to the east is also owned by the city of Milford, and it's a marshland area. The land to the south of the property is again owned by the city of Milford. This is also a marsh area. And the land to the west is occupied by a single-family home. The upland areas are moderately sloped from the street towards the center of the lot from approximately elevation 10 towards 13. And then there's a small but steep slope towards the rear of the actually towards the right, I guess we'd call that the east of the existing house, where it slopes from elevation 13 down to elevation 7, and that's the wetlands. You'll see the wetlands run kind of from the northeast corner and head southerly, and then hook around back to the west. The parcel is 0.76 acres. There are approximately 0.52 acres of wetlands on the property. I'm going to now ask Mary Rose to go to sheet SP1. This is a site plan, generally for zoning purposes, but it kind of gives a clear view of the proposed conditions. So we're proposing to build a house. The house will be built in accordance with FEMA regulations. The property does fall within flood zone AE12. The objective is to utilize the available uplands, considering the shape of the uplands and the zoning setbacks. You'll see that the house is occupying the majority of the upland areas, and you'll notice kind of a quirky little change that was made to the property line in the northwest corner of the property. That was done back in 2004 prior to our clients owning the property. So we are proposing to fill a portion of wetlands to the north, generally to the east of the garage. The objective here is to provide a practical approach to the construction of this house and provide some practical access around the house. To offset the proposed filling of wetlands, the proposed wetlands to be filled is 193 square feet. To offset that, we are proposing to reconstruct and enhance 628 square feet of wetlands. We'll look at that in a moment. That's on a different sheet. I guess at this point we can look at sheet number LS1, which is a landscaping and mitigation plan. It's the next sheet in your application. So here in the kind of the southeast corner of the house and along the south limits of the wetlands is the area that we propose to do some shallow excavation and enhance with wetland habitat plants. There is a key of the different shrubs that we're proposing. We do have a video of the site. We'll look at that in a second. The next sheet in the application package is this grading, drainage, and utility plans. The house will be connected to municipal sewer and public water. We also have a proposed storm drainage for the roof runoff from the house and from the driveway. We've included in the application package a sedimentation and erosion control plan. And we've also submitted an alternate plan. We'll just jump to that quickly, which is sheet AP-1. So with this, because we're proposing to fill wetlands, we wanted to submit an alternate to indicate that the proposal is that we have is prudent, feasible, and practical. This is an alternate plan with the exact same footprint of the house, orientated, squared to the road, customary that you would see on the majority of properties around Milford. And you'll notice to accomplish that, we would be requesting to fill some 1,923 square feet. This is certainly not the plan that we wish to go forward with, but we do want to indicate that we considered alternatives and that the plan that we have before you is a prudent and feasible alternative. I guess at this point, we can look at the wetland, the video, Mary Rose, if that's something that you can share. This was taken by Linda just a few days ago. And I think Mary Rose may have taken some pictures of the property also.
Let's see this. Get this up and then share that screen. So just give me a second.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate all your help.
No problem. Except right now, it doesn't want to work. I tried this before and it worked. I apologize.
Bill Kenny was not available this evening. Bill Kenny would be available on July 20th. I do expect that you will request a public hearing, and July 20th seems to be a date that I can make it and Bill Kenny can make it. So keep that in mind as you discuss this once we've finished this presentation. Thanks.
All right, can everyone see the video start screen?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
33 Howard Court, looking southeast and east to the dead end. The existing house looking southwest, panning to the east. And standing on top of the slope. Now we're looking at the end of our, looking northwest, panning to the west, panning to the east. I'm standing at the top of the slope near wetland flag 13. There are phragmites in the distance. I am at the southwest of the existing house and to the east, the existing shed. The joiner's shed. Phragmites in the distance. The joiner's house. And that concludes our video.
Thank you, Linda. That was Linda Lewis of Connecticut Civil Group, who is also here this evening. If the agency has any questions on the video.
Thank you, Mr. Wassner. Thank you, Mary Rose. Looks like we have a question from Commissioner Bave.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So this alternative that is shown in the application, I frankly do not think that it's a viable alternative. I mean, we cannot be showing alternative that like doesn't work and call it as alternative. I mean, we want to look at alternative that is feasible. So did the applicant consider adjusting the size of the garage, for example? So in that way, there won't be any impacts to the wetlands. I mean, I would like to see alternatives in that fashion instead of showing the one that obviously doesn't work.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I mean, we can certainly apply to fill in 1,900 square feet of wetlands. It falls below the state jurisdiction. The house that we're proposed is moderate in size. We have some constraints with setback requirements as well as wetlands. I don't necessarily want to propose a garage that isn't feasible to park cars in. So, I think if we were to come here with an application to fill 5,000 square feet and we had to go to the Army Corps of Engineers, even though the Army Corps of Engineers entertains applications like this constantly, I wouldn't say that this alternate is not buildable. We chose to go with a less intrusive path because we're trying to work within the guidelines and the experience that I have with your commission. I also think that we're proposing a trade-off of filling wetlands to approximately a 3-to-1 ratio. This has been a precedent that this commission has accepted in the past.
Mr. Munson, can you take over for 5 minutes?
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions or observations?
I think Ron is correct on the other plan is functional and it's not really intrusive on the wetlands. And it's give the people a larger livable house than the little house that's there now.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for the commission, but it's my understanding that your regulations do require a public hearing. Again, I had mentioned July 20th works for us, specifically because we'd like Bill Kenny to be involved, and he's committed many Wednesdays to all the various wetland commissions around the state. Tomorrow afternoon, I have a meeting with the Director of Public Works, Chris Saley. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the city recently improved the end of Howard Court. Mary Rose, can we go to the site plan? I think that would probably be clear.
Do you want an aerial, Ron?
For this part of the discussion, the site plan would be fine. Almost there.
Sorry, go ahead.
So this, that's existing conditions, but that's fine.
Sorry. Do you want the site plan?
No, this is fine. What I wanted to comment about was the way that the road was constructed. You'll see that the existing pavement on the north side, which was recently rebuilt, and the existing pavement that the city has built and maintained is on our property. So that's also another impediment that we have, is that the way that the road was paved, this is from the turn of the century subdivision, Point Beach. Most of the lots in Point Beach are typical beach lots, 50 by 100. This Howard Court was kind of the fringe of the larger tract of land. Most of Point Beach either fronts along the water or Morehouse Avenue, Platt Street, etc. I'm sure you're familiar with that neighborhood. So this was like the fringe of that larger subdivision. And when you get into these older neighborhoods that are kind of on the fringe, the the roads just kind of got built the way they did, unfortunately. So that's something that we have to contend with also, is the fact that the city's street encumbers our property. I am gonna, so leading up to that, I was said that I was meeting with Chris Saley tomorrow. It's a common statement from the city engineer to say that the road has to be improved along the entire frontage of the property. We haven't proposed that. We're not proposing to extend the road at all. My experience with the city engineer is that he would defer that improvements or requirements to the director of public works on a case-by-case basis, which is why we're going to meet with him tomorrow to see if the public works wants any improvements made to the end of the street as it exists right now. So that may be incorporated into your plan. Maybe he'll be happy with the way it is right now. I'm not sure. If there's specific questions or requests to see additional information, you can ask me now, or you can email Mary Rose. You know, we're presenting an application, but you know, we're going to be presenting this again as a public hearing, and you know, we have a few weeks to address those comments prior to the hearing. You're certainly entitled to do a site walk. We provided the video, you know, as an aid to that, but if you wish to walk the site, we can do that also.
I was
any questions or open to what the commission wants to do at this point?
I'd like to ask the agency if they, one point, anytime we have a situation where wetlands are being filled in, it is customary that we have a hearing. So the July 20th, I think we can discuss. I'd like to know if there's anybody, what the agency's feelings are about potential site walk.
I guess it wouldn't hurt to actually see the site.
I tend to agree. I'm going to hand the meeting back over to to Commissioner Magnan, Chairman Magnan.
Thank you for covering. Sorry for the abrupt notice there. Yeah, I'd be a fan of a site walk on this application, given the considerations that are before us.
I would like Mr. Kenny to attend the site walk. So I can't speak for his availability at the moment. If you can give me a few days, evenings, whatever the commission decides, and then I'll pass that on to Bill Kenny to see what his availability is, and then coordinate with Mary Rose and the rest of your staff, or the rest of your commission, I'm sorry.
I can suggest that the agency can move that a site walk be scheduled, and I can inquire of Mr. Kenny's availability and see what works for the agency. Are there dates that work better for the agency right now that I can give to Mr. Kenny, or would you prefer I do this by email tomorrow so you can all just tell me when you are and are not available?
I can let you know that the week of the 27th, I'm not available, but otherwise, anytime is fine.
I'm pretty much go with any time.
Right. So what I'll do is we'll get Mr. Kenny's availability, and I'll send those dates out, and then you can individually respond to me with your availability. And I will post the meeting along with Lisa's availability, and we'll post the meeting appropriately. Does the agency wish to call for a public hearing at this time, or do you want to wait for, actually, in order to hold a public hearing, the applicant needs to send out certified mailings to the adjoiners. As we've discussed, 3 of the adjoiners is the city of Milford, and then we have 1 private property owner. But by statute, that needs to go out 15 days before the hearing. If the hearing were to be held on, if the agency decides on a hearing tonight for July 20th, those could go out on July 5th. If the agency defers calling for a public hearing until July 6th, the hearing would not be held until August 3rd, because they wouldn't be sufficient time for mailings.
I may have missed this. Members, do you recommend a public hearing?
With proposed filling, the agency historically has called for a public hearing. A site walk and a public hearing to give, due diligence to the application.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Chairman,
Mr. Munson.
Mary Rosa, refresh my memory, how much notice do we need to give for a site walk since it's a public thing?
It's a special meeting, so you need at least 24 hours notice.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest, we should maybe set July 20th as the date for the hearing and just, we got plenty of time between now and then to do
We
the
can work
sidewalk.
Sidewalk in, yeah.
And the sidewalk, whenever we can get that set. July 20th, what I'm saying is July 20th is good with me if everybody else is okay with it.
It's a regularly scheduled meeting. So we would need a motion to that a site walk be scheduled, and then we would need a motion that a public hearing be scheduled in the public interest for July 20th.
I'll make that motion.
Those motions.
You make the first motion.
Both.
Okay, we'll probably need to have them made separately, Jen.
Okay. I'll make the first motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the first motion, which is for a site walk to be scheduled? We have a second from Mr. Munson. Lisa, please call the roll. I'm sorry, please, the vote.
This is a motion for a site walk to be scheduled, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Ranjit,
Aye.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Yes.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon.
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Jim, do you have a second motion?
Make the second motion for the public hearing on July 20th,
To be scheduled on July 20th.
2022,
And the reason being,
because of the
Public
wetlands,
interest.
the filling of the wetlands.
it's in the public interest.
It's in the public interest. Okay.
Thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
We have a second. Lisa, please, any discussion on the motion? No discussion. Lisa, roll call vote.
Ranjit Bahav,
Aye.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon,
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Great, thanks, Lisa. Motion carries unanimously. And Mayor Rose, you will provide notice in accordance with our statutory requirements, correct?
Correct. This will be posted in the newspaper for the public hearing. As soon as we get a site walk date, that will be posted as well.
Great. Thanks so much. Thank you, Mr. Wassner. Is there any additional information that we as an agency need from the applicant? If there is, summarize that. Is there any additional information we need?
I think Commissioner Bave was interested in any other alternatives and the testimony of Mr. Kenny.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Rose. Thank you, Mr. Rossmer.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, I believe it's agenda item F.
Consideration of minutes of the previous meeting.
Right, do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Great, we have a motion. We have a second on the motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Commissioner Munson, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Lisa, roll call vote.
Ranjit Bahav,
I would like to abstain because I didn't attend the meeting.
okay. Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Yes.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon.
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Next up on the agenda, staff report. Mayor Rose, could you do an abbreviated version?
Right, my staff report and notes were in the notes that were handed out, are sent
Mayor
out.
Rose's screen.
Share the screen.
Oh, you were frozen. I didn't know if it was just me. It was probably on my side. Everybody's froze for a second.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, okay.
All right, so in my notes, you've got links to the training. When I get a link for the recent seminar on rivers and water courses, riparian zones, we'll send that out. We did get a report in late yesterday afternoon on Tanglewood Circle. So you'll have that at the next meeting, hopefully. And everybody wants a pool shed and deck. 'Tis the season.
Great. Thanks, Mary Rose. Any questions for Mary Rose?
No.
Thank you for your work on the prep for these applications and these matters this evening, and all of your, as always, very valuable.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Chair's Report. Just to remind everybody that the next meeting will be July 6th, 2022. If anyone cannot make it, please let the office know. Preferably in advance, especially given that it's a holiday time. Moving on, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Lisa, roll call vote.
Ranjit Bahav,
Aye.
Daniel Bedecker,
Aye.
Jim Connors,
Aye.
Matthew Connors,
Aye.
Steve Munson,
Aye.
Lisa Tryon.
Aye.
Brendan Magnan.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for your excellent deliberation this evening. Really appreciate it. And special thanks.
Any plan of in-person meeting, or we're still going to be virtual?
Sorry, just to say, Mr. Munson, I want to thank you again. And I know we have it.
Sorry,
We have adjourned. We have it officially adjourned, but you could direct that question to Mary Rose separately.
Okay. All right.
Just everyone, please look out for an email and respond as quickly as possible on that site walk. Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.